All right, we're going to continue looking at our FNMI students that may be in our classroom, as well as a bit more of a general idea around multicultural education. So let's start with our FNMI students. And again, thinking about when we use that umbrella term, we need to be thinking about the individuals in the group. And these are just some aspects that they may have. They may speak English, they may speak French, they may speak a First Nations, Métis, or Inuit language, or a combination of languages in their homes and communities. So again, they are not one entity. They may have cultural and language diversity between nations and regions. They may have skills in their first language that range from very minimal to fluent. So they may have probably a really strong oral first language, but they may have all the way from very minimal reading and writing background to very fluent and comprehensive reading and writing background. And they may use culturally specific nonverbal communication and have specific cultural values and beliefs regarding listening and speaking, passing of stories, and sacred relationships. So again, I think we need to always be thinking about these as individual students under this sort of blanket terminology. So just want to, this is probably pretty much review, given our current situation and the current dialogue that's going on in our society right now. Lots of hurdles for FNMI, inclusion. We know that we have Eurocentric privileges, frameworks, and norms. There's historical discrimination. They're dealing as a group with colonization and oppression, feeling marginalized, feeling powerless, dealing with a lot of violence within cultures, within FNMI cultures, as well as from external cultures, excuse me, and just general exploitation on so many levels, on emotional, physical, societal levels. Also, in the past, we have known that Aboriginal knowledge, voice, and vision is not recognized in Eurocentric view. And then there are those personal barriers that really sometimes are just, they are huge and somewhat insurmountable. Poverty, abuse, and living conditions that our FNMI colleagues live in. And our students that are coming to us are dealing with all of this. This is pretty weighty. This is pretty heavy. And so they are dealing with this on top of potentially learning English, if English is not their first language, as well as then just trying to, figure out what is school and what is ELA learning. Okay. So FNMI inclusion in the classroom is this is part of your reading. This is the Orca book series that I spoke about in the reading strategies lecture. This particular book, Speaking Our Truth, is just again a great place to start. Again, it's not the only resource that's a good resource out there, but this is a good place to start thinking about how can we include our Indigenous children and families more in the classrooms. And if we, you're taking a whole course from Christy on Indigenous practice and Indigenous study, start to pull those ideas from what you're learning with Christy and what you're actually experiencing in that particular class. Specifically, if in the ELA classroom, one of the ways to really incorporate FNMI knowledge and honor the culture is to connect stories or writing to land-based experiences. Many of our FNMI colleagues are very land-based. So start to connect stories and writing to land-based experiences. Bring in stories and lots of oral storytelling, because that is generally, again, a part of their culture. Start to unpack some troubling dominant narratives for students. I think you saw when we tackled some things like death and loss and powerlessness. We need to tackle some of these big topics with elementary students so that it just becomes a part of how they think about their place in society. Have books and novels that reflect Indigenous ways of knowing. There are a lot of those picture books that are available, and a lot of novels that are coming out with just that, a little bit of an Indigenous perspective there. And again, bring in lots of music and cultural traditions of the text in a song. You can bring in elders, but again, I think you need to start down that path of learning yourself and then incorporating that into your practice. So that's just a really brief, just always keeping at the forefront our Fnmi colleagues, and how can we include them in our classroom in a real and authentic way. Okay, let's jump into the concept of multicultural education. I think when we think about multicultural education, and I'm using this term to again, these are umbrella terms to include any student in our class that has maybe moved here from a different culture, is maybe a Canadian born, but their dominant culture is not sort of a white Eurocentric background. However, what I would say around multicultural education is we need to focus on the sameness instead of difference. And I alluded to this in some of your book club talks about Year of the Dog by Grace Lynn, and about how, there were definitely some food things that were different and how some of her family traditions, but really she was just a girl who was trying to navigate being a child and finding friends and fitting in. And so again, I think if we focus on the sameness of us as humans, instead of focusing on, oh, they do this and they eat this kind of food, and at Christmas time they do this and we do this, and I think we're focusing on our same focus as human beings versus the difference in how we live our day-to-day life. Does that make sense? Hopefully. The second point is be as authentic as possible, but don't be paralyzed. So I think in our quest to be so hyper politically correct, we sometimes feel like we can't do anything, and then we're paralyzed, and then we just kind of either ignore or we just never go down that path, which again is not, it's worse to not take a step than maybe to take a wrong step. I want to tell you, Christy and I, this was several years ago, we did an oral storytelling sort of unit with third years, and we got together and we did this thing, and then we went, oh, we didn't actually set up oral storytelling from an Fnmi aspect. As we didn't set it up as sacred, we didn't set it up in sort of any of the major ways that we should have. And we went and we talked to basically the person who was there before David, but in David's position. And she said, yeah, you kind of messed that up, but at least you took the step. And so then we learned from it, and we did some alterations the next year. And so I think don't be so paralyzed that you don't take the step to talk about multiculturalism, talk about sameness and difference, and to really incorporate that into your teaching. Also, I want you to find and utilize good vetted resources to learn more about what is happening in the cultures of the students that are in your classes. Okay, so this is one of, I'm just going to move this down. This is, if I can find it here, an amazing resource. This is Alberta Teachers Association, and basically they have gone through and kind of brought together sources that they feel support multicultural education. Okay, so if you want more information about gay straight alliances and queer straight alliances, here are some websites. If you want to talk about human rights, here are some human rights education activities, right? So this is a really amazing website in here. I'm going to, sorry if this makes you sick, here's inclusion, right? So if you want, again, some more specific Indigenous education, sexual orientation, gender identity, I'm going to go down to this section, working with immigrant students and families. Again, you may be like, you know what, I really want to know about my refugee student from Somalia, but I don't really know much about Somali culture. Well, you go down to here. Let's see. Here we go. Teaching Somali immigrant children. So we go to there, and here's a nice little, it's a 40-page resource. And what it does, I'm just gonna, sorry if this makes you a little bit sick, I'm just gonna go down to the contents. So what they have done is they put together understanding Somali culture and immigration. So quick guide for educators, like what are some of the main cultural understandings, and then where do you begin connecting your school with the Somali community? Let us tell you, these are some of the Somali students' impressions, and who am I and where do I fit in? Lesson ideas to explore identity with immigrant students. So again, some really specific information about this specific group of students. And so you can see that there are Karen immigrant students, South Sudanese, Pakistani, Filipino. Again, it's just a nice little resource that then takes you through that. So again, use these resources that are there to learn as much as you can. Read, as Jennifer Gonzalez would say. And then start to walk the walk. And even if you make a couple mistakes, just apologize, retreat, and try again. But I would like to point out, don't be paralyzed, because if you don't ever go in the direction to really start to include our multicultural students, our Fnmi, our ELL students, there is going to be a dearth in their learning. There you go.